Hi, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to Basic Public Speaking. This video is over active listening, which is chapter 2 in the books that you don't have. But when you go onto the content folder, the basics, public speaking foundations, the PowerPoint presentation, and the chapter review, it's chapter 2, but it's called The Listening of Ethics of Speech. Listening and the Ethics of Speech, excuse me. If you see me look off screen, it's because I've got my notes down here below me. And then also this week, we're going to go over audience, but I won't be doing a separate video for that, but I'll talk about that when I do the recap video for the week. So, let's break it down. Last week, we talked about the communication process itself. So what we're doing with this chapter is really breaking down the listening or the decoding and even encoding process that comes with this, because listening is so valuable in communication and extremely valuable in public speaking. Now, I know what you're thinking, but I listen. I'm here. I listen all the time. People seem to interchange listening and hearing. But they're not the same. Hearing is the physiological, so the physical aspect, the physical process of communication, of listening communication. It's where you hear the noise, it goes through the ear canal to the eardrum, the vibrations happen, all that stuff. It's the actual physical process, whereas listening involves external and internal. It's a process, and it involves not only the verbal, but the nonverbal. So, what do I mean by this? We have so many factors that can affect our listening. So first, let's just discuss verbal and nonverbal cues on listening itself in the process. So when I talked about the communication process, I talked about the sender encoding and sending a message. All right. Think of it as you as the receiver getting this message. All right. The verbal is the message. Here's where it gets fun, folks. We then assign, this all happens like real quick in our mind, for the most part. We assign meanings to the message. And this could be off of factors that are known. This is, how do we know this person? Are they a relative? Are they a close friend? Are they a loved one? Are you in a relationship with this person? Are they a teacher? Are they a co-worker? Are they, the list goes on and on. Are they a boss? Are they just a casual person? Is this someone you're meeting for the first time? So that factors in our listening. What do I mean with this? You will communicate differently with your parents than maybe your siblings, or you're going to communicate different with one friend as you would another. And that's all part of listening. It's because how you know them, your intimacy levels, how well you've known each other. Maybe you have a friend that you've been a friend with for a few years, but then you have that one buddy that's kind of stuck with you since, I don't know, out of the womb, like you've been tight. So, communication levels vary depending on how well or the relationship you have with that person. You may talk differently to a cousin, one set of cousins, than what you will with another, just based off of, your closeness and the relationship you have with them. Okay, that's straight. That makes sense. So we have in our decoding process how well you know someone, your relationship to them. Also, part of this process of listening is how it's said. So you have to, when we listen to people, we take down their verbal cues, how it's said. You can say one thing a multitude of different ways, and it comes across, and then you apply meaning. And then some people may have a different meaning for some things than others. Now, this is kind of off, I don't want to say off the grid, but dialectically, I don't know if that's a word, but we're going to pretend. The United States alone, we have different regions. We have we have northern, south, Midwest, east, west, southwest, southeast, goes back and forth. Do you say Coke or pop or soda? Think about that alone. That's a drink. That's a drink. And it's called different things in different places. Southerners, we have our own language. It's, bless her heart, love their heart. If you're talking to a friend from, I don't know, Minnesota, they may not get the meaning behind it. So, communication that way. And that's just in the United States alone. We have our different phrases and whatnot. Think of it, too, in a global aspect of communication with words, and phrases. They don't mean the same thing. So, as a listener, as the receiver and listening, we're decoding based off how well we know someone, where they're from, the meanings that we have behind a certain word. And then there's also the nonverbal of this. Nonverbal. Nonverbal is the facial expressions, the body language. I'm an expressive person, and I talk with my hands a crazy amount. I do it on video. I do it in person. If I'm having a conversation on the phone, I'm probably using the hand not being used. And I'm also a very facial, expressive person with my face. So you can usually tell if I'm not happy about something. I don't really have what they call a poker face. I don't have it very well. At least I don't think so. So when you're having a conversation with someone, you can usually tell, like, hey, how's it going? Hey, how's it going? It's completely different than, hey, how's it going? Or if you're a friend's friend, how you doing? This is what we're talking about. It breaks it down. They send the message, but us as listeners, how we receive it is based off a multitude of things. Again, your familiarity with a person, your relationship with the person, the dynamic that you have, the nonverbal aspect of it, the intonation, all that falls into listening. These are all components of listening. Now, let's break this down more. We talked about noise in the communication process, and that's a huge factor when it comes to receiving a message and really being able to listen. So there's external and internal. Let's talk about the external first. The external is the noise around us. It can be construction outside, road work. It could be someone cutting grass. I think it's pretty loud. It could be, if you're in a school, like a school setting, it could be noise, the hallway, bells ringing, phones ringing. If you're hanging out with your buddies, it could be the TV in the background. It could be music in the background. If you're at a dance, it could be it's the physical noise that's outside. Now, when it comes to external noise, you can't really prepare for that when you're presenting a speech. What do I mean by that? You don't know if it's a day or you're presenting a presentation, because we try to find ways to combat noise so that we are clear to speak and clear to listen. You don't know what's going on. So if there's a day you're in a classroom and it's a day of cutting grass, you just may be off hearing that and not able to focus on the lecture at hand. And the same when you're, communicating with friends and family. Maybe you're at home and your mom or your dad or, a sibling, someone's trying to talk to you, and all you hear is the television or music in the background or animals in the background or whatever the case may be. It's what you physically hear. Internal noise. Internal is what's inside. I know, it's pretty straightforward on that, but think about it. If you're super hungry or hangry, you're not thinking about listening to your teacher. You're not thinking about listening to your buddy or anybody. All you want is to know when you can get up and get something to eat. Or maybe you're thinking about, oh, as soon as this class is over, I get to meet up with, and we're going to go have lunch or go have dinner. Or maybe there's something coming up this weekend that you're really excited about. Maybe there's a game, or you have work, or there's a dance, or you have a date. Something else is going on that prevents you from being 100% listening, 100% into the conversation, because you are blocked off, because you're listening, or you're daydreaming. Maybe you're just not there 100%. I know I have days like that when I'm just not with it, and I'm like, you know, kind of off in my own little world. These are all internal factors. And there's so much to play. Your emotions, what's going on. Maybe you got a really, you know, sad, bad phone call or text message, or maybe you got great news and you're elated. So you're communicating with someone, and you just really can't focus on what they're saying, or you're not 100% listening because you're just so into what's going on here. Internal noise is the hardest. I don't want to say hardest because external we can't expect, but some internal you can and some you can't. Or perhaps you knew you had a presentation coming up. Okay, and if you know, I've known about this presentation for a few weeks, but the morning of the presentation, something comes up. Maybe you overslept, maybe your car wouldn't start. You know, there could be a whole slew of things that just didn't work out in your favor, so you're not in it to hear it. Those are internal factors, and they are also hard to prepare yourself for when it comes to listening. But as listeners with noise, if we're with internal noise, though, we can I say it's hard to, but at the same time, we can kind of brace ourselves. Like, you go into a classroom, you know you're going to a classroom to learn, be it math, be it science, be it public speaking. You know, you're there and you know generally what it is. It's not like it's a surprise what the lecture will be. So it makes listening, you know, you need to focus a little harder is what I'm trying to get with that. Now, if we rethink noise as both a listener and a receiver, that there are two forms of message. So as the receiver, it's what we physically hear and what we want to hear. As a speaker, it's what we say and what is heard. I know it sounds like the exact same thing, but it's not. You know, what you could be wanting to say may not come across as what was actually said or heard. So that's where we break down into two messages. Now, if we realize and accept that there are two forms of messages, both as a listener and a speaker, especially in the world of public speaking and communication itself, when all the messages are clear and understood, we have an understanding. When what is said and what is heard is not the same, that's where we come to misunderstandings. So we can create ways for understanding, or we can create clearer paths to understanding. Now, sometimes the speaker just may jumble a lot, and I do that, and I go off on tangents easily. I try not to, especially on videos. But with that being said, see, I just went on one. We can work on paths for clearer understanding as listeners. What are some paths to really understand listening? All right, let me give you some examples, or an example. Music critics listen to an album. One says it's the best album they've ever heard, best in the genre, best work of this performer, blah, just nothing but positive accolades. Great. Second critic, it's okay. Oh, their earlier stuff was much better. This is a new route. Why would they do that? Okay, you have two critics. One way happy, one not so much. Circumstances, folks. Circumstances. This also affects listening. What do I mean by circumstances and listening? Those critics, one could really enjoy that genre of music. If it's rap, if it's hip-hop, if it's metal, is it pop, is it country, is it folk, is it some crazy mixed, whatever. They may really enjoy that genre. Whereas the other critic, that's not their thing. So, of course, they don't go into it expecting much. Whereas the one who enjoys the genre, they go into it and they're like, I wanted to listen. I've been waiting for this album to drop for years. I've been waiting. The other one's like, give it or, I could take it or leave it. Those are circumstances. Maybe they don't enjoy the performer. Maybe, that could just be a simple case itself, too. One could really love this performance work. The other one could really just not enjoy the artist's work at all. This is what we're talking about with circumstances. Now, they call this selective perception. Selective perception refers to the way in which people attend to things that they like, ignoring things that they do not like. This comes into speeches as well. And it's not just speeches, lectures, anything like that. You're probably going to pay a lot more attention to something that you enjoy than what you would something that's not really high up on your world. It's not just communication, it's across the board. You're really going to do, if you enjoy it, you're going to want to listen. And you're going to want to really pay attention. So that in public speaking, you could really want to know more about what the speaker has to say because of the topic or the speaker themselves. So you really you pay attention that way. Now, that's selective perception. And underneath that, we have